All right, we're back again with the Moss Point Sports Hall of Fame and the oral history project associated with that. Today we have Richard Lucas, who's part of the Pascagoula Sports Hall of Fame. So he's maybe not the enemy, but sometimes in the past might have been referred to as that. And we have also Moss Point native Robert Beatty here today. So I think it'd be interesting to hear what they have to say about the rivalry between Moss Point and Pascagoula. So, Richard, thanks for coming today and being a part of this. And Robert, always good to hear from you. So, what things do y'all remember most about the rivalry between the two schools?
Well, first, great pleasure to be here, Robert. And I, to be honest, we talk about this a lot because we hang out some, and it's a great pleasure to have and there's several of us around here in the two cities that get into this stuff. So I'll tell you this to kick it off. I'm going to tell you one thing and ask Robert the same question. Okay. I remember the first Pascagoula Moss Point game I ever attended. It was 1952, Thanksgiving Day. Freezing weather. My folks took us. Pascagoula won 12-7 at War Memorial Stadium, and I can honestly, I was 4 years old, and I can honestly say that that I've been hooked ever since then. I'll never forget going to that first game because the feel was already there. Do you remember what maybe perhaps the first Moss Point Pascagoula game you ever went to?
The first one I can really remember, I think, was about 1963. It was the Dancer Stadium when the old field ran east and west.
Yeah.
I remember Robert Wells kicking the field goal near the end of the game, and Moss Point beat Pascagoula 17-14.
Yes.
And I guess in 63 I would have been 12 years old, which was about as early as I can remember.
You probably went before that, but that's early. You remember,
yeah.
I got this weird old memory. I was at that game, and and just to Steve's point about it's such a great storied rivalry, that was the day that President Kennedy got shot. And Moss Point, although the underdog, Robert Wells kicked the field goal, what was it, like 20 seconds left, Robert?
It was near the end
of the game, and it's raining, it's cold. And of course, and then they won fair and square. Of course, the Pascagoula take was, well, Kennedy got shot and we were all down and the players were down, and that's the way the two towns would do about games. But that was a historic game because of the day it happened.
Yeah. And after that game, I cannot tell you if I ever missed another one. I mean, right. Up until this day,
there you go.
I've probably made every Moss Point and Pascagoula game that I can recall.
I would say, I wish we could look that up. I missed one or two when I was off at college because they would play before we got home for Thanksgiving. But I would say I got a 95% rate or something. All right, I'll go back a little farther for one. Famous game, 1959. Okay, so back in the day, they had this little deal where they had a nice big trophy for the game that would do like most rivalries. It would go back and forth to whoever won the game. But I don't know who came up with this, but Pascagoula Moss Point had a little deal that if any team won it 3 years in a row, they kept it. And then hey, we got us one. And then the next one would come in and go back and forth till somebody won it 3 years in a row. Well, Pascagoula was rolling pretty good back then, and they'd won a couple like that. Moss Point had never done that since the 40s when the series got back after being gone for a while. But Moss Point upset Pascagoula in 57, kicked the living heck out of Pascagoula in 58. Now they've won two in a row, and they're favored in 1959. Y'all remember some of these names. The quarterback was Richie Perkins. Had a big end named Graham Nelson. There was a Barry Bosarge. I guess is that Scott's father, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, you're right.
But, it is. And had a really good team. And they were 6-3. Pascagoula was 4-5. It was up here, as you pointed out, Old Dancer that was situated a little bit different, And boy, it was just another knockdown, drag out like they almost always were. And Moss Point scored. Pascagoula scored first and kicked extra point, 7-0. Just back and forth defense back then. Moss Point scores not at the end of the game, but early in the fourth quarter. Well, we're gonna tie it up here. Bad snap from center. Barry Bosarge was the holder, and he grabbed it. And he ran around. He's a good athlete, but He tried to pass, didn't work. 7-6. Pascagoula still ahead, and then back and forth, and then that was it. Nobody scored, and a lot of the Moss Point crowd, it was packed. They were so hacked that they all started running out on the field. And y'all have heard this story. There was a lady, and some Moss Point people know her name. She took it. It depends on how the story goes. It's either her high heel shoe or her umbrella, and she hit Lonnie Watts, who's the head referee, over the head and knocked him out. And that is documented, not whether it was the shoe but she hit him with something and knocked him out. And there was just mass of people out. I was 11 years old then, and I remember my dad said, "Son, we need to get on back to the car." I remember that. So, boy, there were some great games in the past, right, Robert?
I do remember that story. Yep. I don't know, exactly when or who or all the particulars about it, but that story's been told for many, many years around here.
And and there was a little censure that year after the big thing out on the field from the old Big Age, like, hey, y'all got to settle down. Emotions were just really high back then, The very next year, Pascagoula had the Beecham College team that was 9-0. Well, they were 8-0, and they got beat by Natchez in the next last game of the year, which ended up knocking them out of the Big 8 playoffs, and then had to play Moss Point in the last game. And Moss Point was like 2-8 coming in. The final score was Pascagoula 3, Moss Point nothing. You can't, it just the teams play up or down to whatever they have to. It's just always fascinating.
Yeah, that's you've always heard the saying, you can throw out the record books, and that is the case because right before I came in here today, I looked at the overall record. I don't know when they started playing, but I think they played 83 times. I could be wrong here. Mm-hmm. And there's 5 games different. Pascagoula leads the series by 5 games right now.
It's just like right there.
So it's at one time Pascagoula got way ahead, and back during the 90s when Moss Point had some really great teams, they were able to catch up and close that gap. Of course, it started to spread back out a little bit right now.
But you called it just right. Like I remember, I think when I was in high school, because I always have kept up with this. Pascagoula at one point was 20-5 in the series, but boy, Moss Point closed that sapsucker. There were some of those great Jerry Alexander teams and a couple of Billy Williams teams, and now it's 5 apart. Right?
5 apart right now. Yeah. 3 ties. Of course, they don't do ties anymore, so there won't be any more of those.
But there was a tie, I think. Didn't you graduate in '67, Mr. Renfro? So there was a tie his senior year and your sophomore year, the 7-7 game in the rain, and Pascagoula and Moss Point had that great 8-1-1 record, so there was a tie.
Yeah, and if the rules were like they were today, Moss Point would have won.
That's right.
So our extra point was pass.
Yeah. Okay, but that's a non sequitur because they weren't, so it didn't matter. So maybe Pascagoula goes for 2 or something. So, and then of course, see here, I love it. This one, but see, we had this great passing attack, and then the rain came, and that took our game away. We felt like we'd have won easily, but I love that stuff. I love that stuff.
And the very next year, Pascagoula comes in, I think, with like a 7-3.
Yeah.
Moss Point was 2-7 or something like that, and which Moss Point was able to pull off an upset there.
The immortal Gary Clay. You can look this up. He scored every point that night because he scored all the touchdowns, right, Robert? And kicked extra points, and 26-19, something like that.
That was the very last game played on Dancer Stadium when the field went east and west.
Okay.
The very next year, they flipped it to North and South Stadium.
I'm glad you, because I couldn't have done that year. Okay.
Which was my senior year, in which we played no home games that year because the stadium was being renovated. We played all of our home games in Pascagoula.
Yeah, which is actually handy. Yeah. I think, and then stating the obvious here, guys, but I do think it is clearly one of the greatest rivalries in Mississippi, and certainly back in the day, the Southeast, whatever. And one of the reasons is, like I say, the obvious is the towns being contiguous. There's some great rivalries, Hattiesburg, Laurel, Tupelo and Columbus and Brookhaven and Macomb, and they're good. But they're 25 miles apart, 10 miles apart. 40 miles apart. Pascagoula and Moss Point just, I mean, I just came up here. You leave one, you go to the other. So I think it is unique that way, don't y'all?
Yep. Only thing that separates them is Jefferson Street, huh?
You get old Jefferson Street there, you know, and then, you know, sports writers have written it, but it's a good point. Kids know each other, the daddies know each other, the whole bit, you know. So and y'all have heard me. I know Robert's heard me talk about this. That I just hate that they're in different divisions now. We got the classifications on, and they won't let them play the last game of the year because yes, we're old heads, but the last game of the regular season needs to be Pascagoula Moss Point.
I agree.
And even though it's been what 20 years, I don't like it. I don't like it. Pascagoula Moss Point is supposed to be November, cold, emotion, and now we play like August or September. It's 90 degrees, and anyway, we had it for a while there, though, didn't we, guys?
That's right. Well,
So what about the year Rooster Jones was a junior, I think?
Sophomore.
Sophomore?
I think I know what year you're
They
going
played
for.
in
Yep.
Moss Point?
Yep.
That was a really good game.
That was a great one. There's, you know, and mentioned some Pascagoula victories now, a couple of good Moss Point victories. That was Pascagoula was 8-1 coming into the game. Moss Point was 9-0, and that's good stuff. I wish we'd have that more often, or would have had it more often. And played at Dantzler, and this is fine. And look, this is part of having me up here. We're talking about this Pascagoula Moss Point thing. True story. Pascagoula, everybody knew it was going to be an unbelievable crowd. Pascagoula said, well, let's just play it at War Memorial because we can get so many more people in. And Moss Point very correctly said, no, you know, we could, but we're not going. We're going to keep our home field advantage. And that place was just overflowing. And Pascagoula had Rooster, but he's just sophomore, but he was great. Moss Point had that team that had so many signed college scholarships and went on to play in the Big 8 playoffs. And final was 31-24, Moss Point. Pascagoula had the ball, first and goal on about the 5-yard line right at the end of the game. And, you know, 2 yards, 3 yards. Rick Nyers is the quarterback. He dives in. He's in. We're going to tie it up. It's got chalk all over. And the referee put it on like the 1-inch line, as they will. And then Rooster ran the 4th down play, and he did not score. He definitely got stopped on about the half-yard line. 31-24. Not a bad game, guys.
Some exciting stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I think the only other time Moss Point had a bigger crowd was when we played Tiger. I think they were hanging off rooftops.
they're sitting in trees, hanging on rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
I lived on the corner of Main to Dancer Street, and before I could back out of my driveway, cars were parked.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
trying to get to the stadium.
Yeah.
No,
I love it when it's like that. I love it when it's like that.
Another story about you never can tell what happened. What was the 1996 team that Moss Point went on to win the state championship? Their only one loss that year was
Pascagoula.
Pascagoula.
That's a great catch at home. You know, Reggie. You know, it was a great game. And because I had texted a friend of mine before I came here because I wanted to check on it. That one, and then I think Pascagoula won the 76 and 87 states. And Moss Point had okay, but not great teams that year. The scores of the Pascagoula Moss Point, Pascagoula won 14-7 and 14-0. I mean, that's what happened with this rivalry. Everybody ready to play in this game. I think another pretty good one, maybe, because I laughed at myself and I was taking mental notes that as Robert and I we're going to be thinking about those games back in the day, and hopefully that's going to help, our archives here. So, Richard, think of something a little more recent. And so I thought about 2012 when it was the first year that Lewis Sims was coach of Pascagoula, and he'd been the coach at Moss Point for the previous 3 years. Had a good record and all that, but whatever. And came up to Pascagoula, so that was kind of a big deal. And the game was at Dantzler, and it was overflowing that night. And even though it wasn't the last game, because now we switched to the playoffs thing. But oddly enough, maybe it was up in September, but it was kind of cool and rainy, and it had that feel of the old Pascagoula Moss Point games. And Pascagoula won 10-0, but it was just a nail biter and all that. So there's more for those who think Robert and I can't remember anything that's not back as far as 1980. There you go. But boy, just some good stuff, What else can we tell you, Steve?
Well, I think that y'all pretty tell us just a little bit about what Pascagoula has done with the Pascagoula Sports Hall of Fame.
Okay, sure. And first thing I'll say is I think this is fantastic that y'all are doing the Moss Point Athletic Hall of Fame. We've had great success with the Pascagoula, and through the years, I've had numerous people say to me, "This is great. Does Moss Point have one?" I'm like, well, not yet. And now I can say, heck yeah, they do. Yeah, we started in 2016. And to give credit where credit's due, there's Joe Davis, who's a trainer for Pascagoula High, and Donis Harrison, who happens to be an orthopedic surgeon around here, but he was the head of the Pascagoula Athletic Foundation at the time. And they came up with the idea, and I worked at the health system at the time, and he came around to my office one day. He said, "Hey, we got this great idea for a Athletic Hall of Fame." And I said, "That's great. I've thought over the years, I wish somebody down there on the coast do that." And he said, "Good. Well, I want you to organize it," kind of like happened to you, Steve. And I was like, well, now, wait a minute. I said, if I can get a guy, and I have a friend, Gary Stevens, I think both of y'all know, and he's real knowledgeable. I said, if he could be my co-chairman, he said, yeah, that'd be fine. So that was the genesis of it. And what we did, and I bet y'all have been doing, is we made a lot of calls and visits to other halls of fame. We'd call Ole Miss and Southern, and we'd call some of the Mobile high schools and whatever, and that helped us a lot. Do this, don't do that, and that kind of thing, And then we built the committee, which y'all have done. Y'all, it sounds like you're rolling here. And as y'all are finding out, it's hard picking these classes because these two towns have, we're biased. Y'all know that. But Pascagoula Moss Point have got it going on sports history. Because I'll give you a recent example. Gulfport now has one. We actually started one before they did. They started one like a year later. And they had their last classes in the Sun Herald. And I look it up if you hadn't already looked it up. And you're talking three guys here at this filming session that are pretty dang sports knowledgeable. I didn't know half the players. They're already kind of scraping a little bit. This will be the fifth class. And man, I'm going to tell you right now, and it'll be the same with Moss Points, you're going to know everybody in this class. It's been pretty phenomenal. We've had, Super Bowl winners. We've had MVPs at their colleges. Got the first female referee in the NFL, and Moss Point's going to have this too. These two cities have produced great athletes. So we have been we started doing it every other year because we found out that every year, well, one thing is it's a little bit of a task to put on, and this, Steve, an event like that, get sponsors and all that. And one of the suggestions we got from these other halls of fame we talked to was you don't want to water it down. You want to make people wait a little bit and make sure the classes are great. So it's been a labor of love, but it's been a cool thing so far. And y'all are going to find this out. We've been having hours. We did have it at the Pascagoula High Performing Arts Center last year to be different. It's cool, but we've been having it at the Hilton Garden Inn, and we've had 250, 300 people. Now that's pretty impressive. Y'all will do the same because people care about this stuff, and they go get out there and they want to see these guys and gals. So I appreciate you asking. It's been a great run, and I'm so glad y'all are doing one.
Well, thanks for coming today and sharing this. Robert, I can't believe without asking you how many consecutive Moss Point football games have you seen.
He does good.
You must hold the record. What is it?
Well, I went back and did some numbers. At one point,
Nice.
I went 14 years, and I never missed a game, home or away.
That is awesome.
Straight. And it wasn't easy to do because one night we may be playing, one Friday night they may be in Baton Rouge, and the next Friday night in Montgomery, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of getting off early,
Yeah.
leaving early, a lot of gas money, that kind of thing. 183 games, I think, is what it encompassed.
That is absolutely terrific.
And the way it ended is my daughter played soccer at Mississippi College.
Yep.
And she had a Friday night game in Alexandria, Louisiana. And I had a choice to make go see her play. And I said, well, it's got to end somewhere. So Well, I took off on a Friday night, and we went to Alexandria to see her play soccer, and that's where
Thing, isn't it?
it ended. But I have a little loose leaf binder at home. That
Okay.
I wrote down every score,
That's great.
every team we played, and home or away, and I've got that somewhere. But yep, that was a good ride. Sure
That
was.
is so wonderful. Steve, Robert, and I bet every year on the Pascagoula Moss Point. He makes me give him points now. I'm like, what? Come on. And we know where each other sit. And we'll get out our binoculars if we have to and just go, all right, good, there's Robert over there. And we'll text during the game, you sure you don't want to give me some more points? Or why did I have to give you 6 points? You're killing me. So we still have fun with it.
And we didn't do any texting back in the 60s, did we, when trying to go back and forth between the sides? But
oh, yeah, no, there was no texting back then. That's right. But it's great stuff.
All right. Guys, thanks so much for being here today. Look for this on our Moss Point Sports Hall of Fame website.